I really do think we are in the last days. And I do think that this upcoming eclipse is a sign of the times. I do think that there is a lot of layers to it. But as somebody who knows how to read the signs in the heavens, I'm looking at this and I'm taking note and I'm going, okay, would I be okay if I died today?
All right, welcome to the Sound the War Cry podcast. I am your host, Heather Mitchell, and I am here with someone that is just incredible. She's going to blow you away. This is Naomi Fox Reina, and I was introduced to Naomi actually through Ali Duzette, who was on this podcast as well. So I am I'm getting into astrology more and my human design. I've been into human design maybe for the past couple of years, just dabbling. I don't understand it like all that much that I want to. And I know that Naomi actually certifies people in astrology, which is amazing. And she does it in such a light-filled way that brings God into the whole thing. And that's what I was looking for when I've been studying astrology and human design. I wanted to keep it really God-centered. So I'm so glad I found you, Naomi. And if there's anything you want to add to this introduction of what else do you do? What do you offer? Tell us a little more about you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm just so honored to be here. And I love your podcasts. I think that they're incredible and they're definitely blessing people everywhere. So I just feel really honored to be contributing to these voices that are happening here. And beautiful introduction. Thank you. Yes, I certify light-filled astrologers and I teach light-filled human design. And I have a myriad of online digital courses. Like the latest one is light-filled parenting to be able to help parents to connect better with their children and understand them and just stop pulling their hair out over what is often very simple fixes just by understanding them in a deeper way, in a light-filled way. And I have a number of those, and I've got a whole bunch of certified light-filled astrologers that are offering different programs and, live classes. And it's just a whole bunch of awesome over here.
Yeah, so I love it. And we're definitely going to share more about that parenting one on my other podcast, which is Nourished Connections. I want to ask you this question. Why should we take astrology seriously? A lot of people think of astrology and they go, no, it's too woo. You might be pushing away from the church in some ways if you dabble into this. What do you have to say about that?
100%. I can say I understand, like, because that was me for the longest time. I always saw astrology as something of like, we don't touch the evil things, and astrology was just in that. Like, I didn't have a strong charge against astrology growing up, but I grew up in a very faith-filled conservative Christian household with 9 brothers and sisters. And, we read the scriptures every single day, and I went to seminary for 4 years. And, I feel very grateful for the foundations that I learned. And as part of that, I just knew that astrology wasn't of God. It couldn't be of God. It was one of those things. And so I was quite surprised that I ended up not only becoming believing that it had merit and value, but ended up teaching it. And the reason why I had that is because somebody introduced me to my astrology, to how my astrology is wired within me and what it has to show me in a way that was light filled and made sense and actually impacted my life. And I felt God in it. And so when people have a strong resistance to astrology, I say, I get it. I'm not here to convert people to think that astrology is the way to go, but I feel called by God to gather the people that are feeling those little promptings of, hey, you should look into this thing. Like, there's value here. There's something here for you. But then they don't want to lose their connection to God, or they don't want to be led astray, or they don't want to be led into the darkness with it, because there are dark-filled teachers out there in astrology and human design. And when God first told me, hey, you're supposed to teach astrology, I was like, no, no, no. I obviously heard that wrong. Come again.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I've sat with it and the more that I've unfolded it, astrology is the most beautiful communication about our divine wiring that I've ever seen. I've always been into personality quizzes. I love people. I've always been a scientist of people, just studying them ever since I was little. I just wanted to understand motivations and connections and intimacy and all of it. It endlessly fascinates me, and nothing satiates to the level that astrology and human design does in truly explaining how we are wired, not how we think we should be, where most personality tests are asking questions that you answer based on what you think you should be behaving like, but they can't get to the heart of the issue. And so with astrology and human design, what it is it's an imprint of how you were divinely wired the moment that you took your first breath on the planet. There was an energetic signature on the planet in that moment, and it was imprinted on you. And I believe that as we were preparing to come to Earth, that we co-created ourselves with God, that our intelligences were
Mm.
gathered. And as part of that, we thought, okay, well, I need these specific challenges and I need these specific strengths and I need to meet these people and I need to be in this family and all to the level that you could sit and ponder it for days and blow your own mind on how precise it was the moment that you were born and where you were born and what family you were born into and what birth order and all of that is manifest in your birth chart. And it is so divine. There is no way that it is a mistake. And I believe it's what we chose intentionally with God, where we kind of made that decision where it's like, okay, well, I needed to be born at this time, at this day, at this moment, in this exact way, so that I could enter the planet to offer my gifts and blessings and also learn the things that I need to learn. And that's what I see every time I look at a natal chart or every time I pull up a body graph.
Oh my gosh. That is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Like I've never heard it said like that before, that we co-created ourselves with God. And that just feels like truth to me. It just feels like it was true. And I think if we all knew how in depth that moment was when we came to the earth, how important all of that was, we would see our value and our worth a whole lot more. And
Yes.
we'd be able to truly live into our potential and find fulfillment without putting ourselves down and all the negativity that's hitting us. We'd be more like in tune with God. It's the only way that I have found so far to truly connect with God in this way. And I was ready for something more. And that's when you kind of came in and I was like, okay, I need more. I just need more. And I already had like a great relationship with God, but I wanted to know myself more and what he needed me to do even more. And this is where it totally took the next level for me. So I love it.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
probably see that all the time.
I do, and it's been my experience because I already had established a really good relationship with God when I first had my first encounter with astrology because astrology came first. Well, human design technically came first, but I put it away and I dismissed it because I was like, the minute you were born can't have any bearing on anything in life, and I totally threw it out the window.
Yeah.
And so when I just went and got my hair cut with somebody who was really into astrology. And she was obsessed with it. And so she's like, asking me the questions. And I'm like, no, I'm not really into that. But she just wouldn't shut up about it. And she got the minute I was born and told me stuff that I know people for 10 years that I don't tell that stuff to. Like it was very personal. It was very accurate and precise. It wasn't the type of thing that you could read in a newspaper that it's like, well, that could apply to anyone. It
Yeah.
was it was extremely precise information and it answered questions and gave me a whole new path that I hadn't been seeing. And so when I see people that have that aha, when they can really kind of melt into, you are so divinely created and like your gifts and your strengths are incredibly unique. And we are not all here to become homogenized. We are here to really make manifest the glory of God that is within us in the way that we're supposed to. And the more that I dive into it, the more I can truly celebrate the absolute uniqueness that we all are. When somebody behaves totally different than I would, but I know their chart, I can go, oh, that's so beautiful. I love that they're showing up this way because this is who they were created to be.
Hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if you do this, but now that I have kind of learned about the zodiac signs and all that, I'm like, I try to guess every person who like crosses my path. I'm like, oh, I bet they're an Aries. I bet they're a Leo. I don't know. It's just,
Funny enough, I never guess because I always wonder. I always
yeah.
wonder. I'm never not wondering. Like if I could really just lead out with a question with everybody that I encounter, it would be, could I please look at your chart? If I had a superpower, it would be that I could see people's charts like pop up above their head and I could just know
Yes.
who they were as I'm interacting with
Yes.
them. Anytime
Yes.
I'm watching a show, you get into something really deep and I'm like, I need to look up this actor's information, right? And like
Right.
I'm constantly looking it up and bless my husband, he never ever finds any of it ever irritating because
Oh,
I am
good.
relentless. I never stop asking. I need to know their chart. I need to know what's going on here because I love having their chart tell me who they are rather than me guess.
Hmm.
And it just happens again and again where you're watching a show and you're like, oh, I just feel like they really capture this character. So I need to know what the actor has running.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it never ceases to entertain me.
Is it hard to find their birth time?
Sometimes no. Most celebrities, if they're big enough, then they either have a birth time published, like if they ever leaked it at any point ever, you can pretty
Yeah.
much consider it smattered
Yeah.
across everything. But there are several celebrities that have a birth time unknown or their accuracy is questionable. And then I just need to look because I need to look at what's going to change based on the birth minute. And it's like Jim Parsons. We got really into the Big Bang Theory
Hmm.
and everything. And so I had to look up Jim Parsons because he does a phenomenal job of playing Sheldon on The Big Bang,
Yes, he does.
like off the charts. So I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, he's an Aries. I was like, that's really fascinating. I wouldn't have guessed that. And as I'm going through it, I'm looking, I'm like, I recognize these placements. Where have I seen these before? Turns out he's hours older than my husband.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, Mercury in retrograde in Pisces. I've seen that before. Sun and Moon in Sagittarius. Like, I'm just going through and I'm like, it took it to another layer because my husband is hysterical. I think he's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And so to have this very talented actor, and basically they have so many similarities in their charts, I'm like, that makes sense.
Does your husband act like him though?
No, not at all. But you can tell Sheldon is a character that he's playing. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure that that's not how he is in real life. And in the show, they actually make him a Pisces. Like his character, he
Oh, okay.
reports that he's
Yeah.
a Pisces, which is just fascinating as well. But for people that get really into the Big Bang Theory,
Yeah.
they have all the astrology of all the characters on there and everything.
Oh, geez, that's funny. Okay. Well, listen, this
Side
podcast
tangent.
is really about the end times
Yes.
and preparing people for what's coming up. And I just thought, gosh, everyone's talking about this April 8th eclipse. We have to talk about it too.
Yes,
And you just
absolutely.
did like the best video on YouTube on it. I've watched it twice now. So the April 8th eclipse, let's talk about why are eclipses so significant? Why are they even important? Why should we pay attention? What can you tell us about that?
So eclipses, on one hand, are very normal. They happen twice a year. They are going to happen. They call it eclipse seasons. They're going to happen whenever the sun is close to the nodal path because the alignment of the sun and the moon during a celestial event, meaning during a full moon or a new moon, the closer that it is to the nodal path, that's what creates an eclipse. When it's technically within 16 degrees of the nodal path, that creates an eclipse. And so that right now, the North Node is in Aries at the time we're recording this, and the nodal path takes about 18 months to transit through a sign. And so the North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra. And so during Aries and Libra season this year, we have eclipses. That part's normal. What's unusual about this eclipse, there's many things that are unusual about the upcoming eclipse on April 8th, is that it is a total solar eclipse, which means it's very, very close to the nodal path. It's
Can
very
you
aligned.
can you first tell us the definition of a nodal path?
Yes, the nodal path is arguably one of the most important aspects of a natal chart. So if you're like, oh, I'm an Aries or I'm a Gemini or I'm a Scorpio or whatever you say, like, this is what I am, that part is important. Yes, there's no question about that, but there's so many more layers to it. Like the moon and Mercury and Venus and Mars were all in different placements. They all had their own place and they're all exuding this energy within you. The nodal path it deals with our soul direction. So the north node is where our soul has contracted to go to, and the south node is what we have contracted to let go of. So in theory, the way that astrology teaches this is that when you arrived on the planet, you already had gifts that you had developed. You already had things that you had mastered. Like on a soul level, you were really good at those things. But in this lifetime, you are meant to not cling to those things that are your comfort zone, the things that come really easy to you. You're actually here to learn a very specific set of things that do not necessarily come very easily to you, and that is the North Node. And most people will make that transition from kind of more of their South Node energy to their North Node energy around 40 to 45 years old. In
Hmm.
that stretch, we start to really let go of the old comfort zone and move to the north node because we're going through some significant transits at that point in our life. It can start as early as what's called the Saturn return, which is in your late 20s. Most people that have survived past their late 20s probably had something very significant and hard that happened around 28, 29, or 30 years old that was life-changingly hard. That's your Saturn return. And
Hmm.
the nodal path starts to kind of awaken at that point where we start to really pay more attention to soul things and And then when we're in our mid 40s, we're really kind of more in that full focusing on the north node of that path. And so like, do you want to talk about your nodal path
Yes.
just for something
Let's do
personal?
it because we're here.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. So your north node is in Cancer, which means your south node is in Capricorn. They're always opposites. So you
Yes.
are here to let go of the regimented structure of this should be this way because it's the way it's supposed to be. Basically, you take everything shadow side of Capricorn of like the rigidity and the ultra mature thinking without the compassion and without the caretaking aspects. You're here to let go of that aspect that can be overly rigid and overly kind of harsh about things. And you're
Yes.
meant to move into compassion and nurturing and understanding and emotional intelligence and sympathy and empathy and all of these things of just being that full mother kind of
Mm.
of a like taking care of people through your podcast, taking care of people that way in a way that is healthy and good, obviously, that has healthy boundaries and all of that. But you're moving into that very healthy Cancer energy.
Mm. So what if I feel like I'm being attacked? Because on social media, sometimes I will post a comment and I feel like people are attacking, and I don't like to comment on other people's stuff. But when I feel like, and I lately I felt like it's time, come out and be bold about your religion or whatever, and just say it to these people who are naysayers, you know? So I'll
Yeah.
do that. And then I just feel like everyone starts attacking me. And that's when I feel like, don't do it anymore, back off, you know? And I get really scared and I feel like,
Yeah.
why do I even do that?
That's your stellium in Libra. So you have like 6 placements in Libra.
Yes.
And with having Saturn and Mars in Libra, and a lot of it is in your some of it's in your 10th house is what I see here, but a lot of it's in your ninth house. But the Libra is always going to be seeking balance, which means that often people with like I have 5 placements in Libra, so this is very much personal, and I've looked
Yes.
into this a lot. I'm not a Libra, you're not a Libra, but both of us share quite a
Yes.
lot in Libra. We're actually only about a year apart in age, and so by the
Right.
time, like with the snapshot of me and the snapshot of you, we both happen to have a lot in Libra and very similar things in Libra, not all of it. And so Libra energy needs to kind of enter places that are imbalanced to balance them
Mm.
and can create imbalance by saying, I'm going to go start a podcast that stirs things up, like creating imbalance to create balance.
Hmm.
Because Libra is the scales, it's always needing to kind of rebalance things. And Saturn is pretty happy in Libra, Jupiter is not. Saturn is that diligence and that it's a very similar energy to the Capricorn energy that's very harsh. And it's like the regimented teacher that's like, go back to the beginning and start over. You didn't do it right. You know, like it's just very,
Hmm.
very, very
Hmm.
like you have to do this with precision. It has to be done in the exact right timing and order. Saturn is the governor of karma and timing. Jupiter is the opposite. Jupiter is like, you can skip a step, you can have a car, you can have a car. Like we'll just put it on credit. We'll just put it all on black. Like whatever.
Oh,
It's just
geez. Yeah.
we, right? And
Yeah.
so having both of those in Libra creates an interesting experience in life because you're constantly balancing the integrity.
Wait, do I have both of those in
You
Libra?
have both of those in Libra. So
Sounds
I
like totally me. Yes.
yeah. And so you're constantly balancing the diligence and the integrity and
Yes.
the strictness of things and the over generosity. And Libra, Jupiter in Libra struggles with generosity because it can get itself lost and I'll give too much over here in this relationship. And so Libra Jupiter is it's a struggle bus one, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what's been going on. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. But it sounds like just stay on this path, but try to also be kind and nurturing, I guess. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I personally have had I've had some really difficult tangos with my Jupiter and Saturn in Libra with being attacked. But mine happened around my Saturn return. Um, I had started a business and my very best friend at the time had started a hate blog against us. And like I was literally repeatedly attacked for years, like
Ah,
regular blogs, like destroyed. Like they went to our competitors and like said, like, oh, this is what they're doing. And then our competitors sued us like out of existence. Like
oh
it
no.
was very aggressive. And so as you're talking, I'm like, I have spent a lot of time meditating on like, how did I create this situation? What was this meant to help me learn? Like, what
Yes.
is one of my favorite questions about life is what is right about this that I'm not seeing?
Right.
Because there's always something divine, there's always something of light, there's always something good, even if the situation is complete and utter chaos. There is always something positive to learn in that. And so for me, the lessons that I've learned from that experience that spanned a few years during one of the hardest times of my life, aside from that, um, I'm still harvesting the blessings from that daily
Mm.
of truly not caring what other people think, but not in like a narcissistic way where I'm like, I don't
Yes.
care about anybody, but understanding that other people have their own path and not also jumping in and creating chaotic scenarios by me playing the martyr or playing the victim, which I used to do. It was like my favorite role to put on, and I didn't even know it. And so for me, my personal lessons were from that were to live in that very diligent integrity, to not overgive and to not overextend, and to follow the things that I specifically feel prompted to do. Um, and just so many layers to it. So this is where natal charts can be so helpful and supportive because you can look and see what are the lessons that I'm learning. Saturn will always be what the lessons are that you're learning. So you and
Hmm.
I are both here to learn the lessons of balance and relationships. And
Yeah.
so getting attacked is a manifestation of a serious imbalance in relationships in some way. But the solution is not going to be universal. Like what the solution will be for my way of balancing relationships won't be the same for yours, but that's a shared lesson that we have
Hmm.
because of when we were born.
Yeah. So interesting.
Hmm.
So with the eclipse, is there anything you see on my chart, I guess, that I can expect to happen? I mean, I feel like right now I'm going through some transformation big time. So,
Yeah. This eclipse will be happening in what's called your third house, which is the house of communication, siblings, and your immediate local, um, like your neighborhood.
yeah.
Or the third house, it deals with the things in your life that happen to be there, like siblings. Siblings happen to be there. You're born into a family, the siblings happen to be there. Or you move into a house, your neighborhood, your neighbors happen to be there. Or you go to church and the people that are in your church congregation happen to be there. They're not people that you choose. And that's really what the third house is. And it's also communication and short trips and like local travel, like
Mm.
traveling within your city or your town. And so you're going to have a massive renewal to all of those energies. So I'd be checking in on your siblings and
Mm.
just kind of check in and see how your relationship is with them. And so because it's a new moon event, which creates that solar eclipse. It's a very inward, private, quiet, self-evaluative energy. Full moons are big and expressive and releasing and louder energy. It's a up and out. It's a harvesting time. It's when things come above the surface. New moons are when we go so inward and so private. Like the moon hides from us. Like during a regular new moon, not an eclipse, we don't see the moon for a night or two, maybe three, because she's quote gone away. We know she's still there, but it's this energy of needing to retreat. We'll often get a little bit more organized. We'll go through things. We'll purge stuff. We'll stop answering the phone so much. Like new moons are a time of inwardness. And so
Okay.
this is a powerful inwardness.
Hmm.
And so yours will be a strong self-evaluation of like, am I getting my needs met, being an Aries energy? And with all of this opposing everything, it's going to be opposing what did you have in Libra? That was I don't think you have an asteroid that's directly like almost exactly opposing this particular eclipse. No, it's really close to your Saturn. Yeah, this is really going to hit on your Saturn because it's going to be opposing it. And so there's going to be a lot of that stretch. It's going to really call out that integrity. Are you living in integrity with the things that are right for you? There's classic integrity, like telling the truth to people, not being dishonest,
Mm.
all of those things. And then there's the little kind of nitty gritty integrity of like God's been prompting you to do this thing and or to stop doing this thing and
Hmm.
following
Right.
through on those.
Right. Okay. Okay. Got it. So eclipses in the past, I think ancient times, as you said, were a bad thing because
A
stuff would
lot of
happen, right?
yeah, Yeah, a lot of cultures have seen them as bad omens
Right.
because you're disconnected from source. Like if you didn't know what was going on, you'd come up with your own explanation. But if the sun goes away, I mean, if you don't have any technology and you just live off of the land and all of that, you know that you live by the sun. You know that when the sun comes up, you wake up and
Right.
that's what makes your plants grow and that's what allows life to happen. And if the sun goes away, it gets cold and dark and it's dangerous on many levels. And so on the most fundamental level, the sun in the sky is a beautiful depiction of the Son of God.
Yes.
And I love the symbolism there of with an eclipse, with a solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse, we are cut off from God momentarily, but we're not because our connection to God doesn't come from the physical sun in the sky. Our connection to God is a very internal thing. We can have his spirit to be with us all the time. But it can feel temporarily like that disconnect. The sun also represents our ego in
Mm-hmm.
the light and the shadow of it, our sense of self. It's important to have a sense of self, but do we have an incorrect sense of self? Do we have a misperception of how important we are or are not? Because the dichotomies of life are fascinating. Like you are the most important person in your entire life and you are the last person you should be thinking of in your life. Like both are true. You
Yeah.
can't have a successful life only thinking about yourself and you can't have a successful life only thinking about others. And this particular eclipse for everyone, not just you, we talked about your third house, but this particular eclipse is highlighting that in a very powerful way because Libra energy, which is where the south node is for this eclipse, is we are letting go collectively. We're letting go of codependent behavior of things that have gotten us into total enmeshment, not knowing where I end and you begin. All of that is being highlighted, and we are being all collectively called to focus on how do you put yourself first? How does that look in a healthy way? What does God think putting yourself first looks like? That's what this eclipse is calling us to do. And
Mm.
this particular eclipse it has what's called Chiron, which is an asteroid
Mm.
exactly conjunct the eclipse. Like it is very as an astrologer, this is a big deal. I try not to be sensational. I try to
Yeah.
be very calm about things and say this is a big deal, this isn't a big deal. There's a lot of stuff that I see people on the internet making a big deal of, and I'm like, it's not really that big of a deal, but I get it. It creates views and it sells things. So I understand why people get sensational. But when I say, so the eclipse is happening at 19 degrees and 24 minutes of Aries, and so the sun and the moon will both be at 19 degrees and 24 minutes. And if you don't know anything about astrology and you're listening, like that's fine. Just know that that's like technically the moment, the marking in the 360-degree wheel of the zodiac where this is happening. Chiron is also at 19 degrees and 24 minutes. It is exactly conjunct. That
Oh
is a
my gosh.
very big deal.
So what does
So
this mean? What could happen?
Chiron is our soul wound. It is where we hurt the most and it's where our healing comes from. It is the wounded healer. So it's both wounding and healing. And so to have a solar eclipse happening exactly conjunct Chiron in Aries means that not only are we looking at how are you putting yourself first in a way that's healthy and where are you failing to do that, but also there is this strong focus on our wounds of identity and sense of self because that's Aries energy is identity and sense of self. Aries represents the ram, the head. It's the child of the zodiac. It's the energy of like a little 2-year-old running around buck naked in the sprinklers, just
Right.
enjoying life and sunshine and all of that. That's Aries energy. I love Aries. It's my favorite. I'm married in Aries. It's the best. But it's a very invigorating energy. But as we move into that wounding of it, we imagine like childhood wounding. We imagine wounding of identity of who are you? When you say I am, that is an Aries energy. If Jesus was born in the spring, he was an Aries
Mm.
astrologically.
Mm-hmm.
The statement for each sign has a statement. The statement for Aries is I am. I love the
Right.
symbolism of Aries energy. And a lot of people have trouble with Aries energy because it's very passionate and it's very fiery and it blows
Yes.
up quick and
Yes.
it can be really intense to
Mm-hmm.
deal with. It's a sign of war. It's a very, very fiery energy. Um,
Yet it's
But
playful. And that's just so interesting that those two go
yes,
together. Yeah.
yes, because if you look at a kid when they get upset 10 out of 10 and they're, raging and all the things and then 2
Yes.
seconds later they're fine because
Right.
they've felt it and they've let it move through them. That's Aries, and Aries, when they blow hot and they blow big, but that doesn't mean that they're attacking anybody. But if you have a sensitivity towards passion, or you think people shouldn't express anger, you're going to have a hard time with Aries. We are all being shown righteous anger through this transit of the nodal path
Mm-hmm.
going with the North Node in Aries. And we're about halfway through, a little bit, not even halfway through yet, of this lesson collectively of understanding that passion and intensity and anger have a place. They are part of the human experience, and there is a rightness to them and there is a
Yes.
goodness to them. Obviously, they can be totally misconstrued, but literally so can everything. The internet can be the biggest blessing of your life or the biggest detriment. The people who moved next door could be the biggest blessing of your life or ruin your life. Like
Right.
that, there is nothing that is inherently like, oh, this is a good thing or this is a bad thing. There are so few things in life that are that black and white, and very,
Mm.
very, very few things that I've ever found that truly are universally 100% positive and negative. And maybe there's not even anything. It just depends on where you're standing and what your experience is. But with the North Node in Aries and this solar eclipse in Aries and conjunct Chiron, it is very much about self, and in a healthy way, examining that, and also getting to know our own passion and our
Yeah.
own anger and feeling our anger. I
Mm-hmm.
recently listened to a book called The Tao of Fully Feeling, like TAO,
Mm.
one of the best psychological healing books I've ever read. I bought it, in print and everything. And he talks about this concept of angering that he developed, where when he brings people into therapy or gives them assignments to work on their own, to consciously bring up the anger from things that you hadn't been sufficiently angry about in the past, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to feel that anger. You
Yeah.
have to, he even talks about blame in a healthy way that I'd never heard of before, but that if we don't accurately place blame where it belongs in a healthy way, we can never move on. If somebody actually hurt you and you never say, this was their fault, they should not have done this was not okay, I am not okay because of this thing happening, if you don't fully feel that, you can't accurately place responsibility where it is. If you say, nope, it's my fault, I created this, or, I'll just take responsibility, you're lugging around stuff that's not even yours. It's out of integrity to take blame for something that you didn't do. And this Aries North Node and this eclipse, all of that stuff is being highlighted.
Okay, but what
So,
about the people who will blame everything on somebody else?
well, that's an
Like this is
unhealthy,
my family to
yeah.
a T that I grew up with even, and my kids do it. They're never at fault. It's always somebody else's fault.
hmm That's because they're inaccurately placing blame.
Yeah.
When we accurately place blame, there can be peace. And when you say, like, I'll use a personal example. I am divorced. I
Mm-hmm.
have an ex-husband who was violent with me repeatedly, and there was infidelity and like all the whole nine yards, right? Like,
Yeah.
throw a dart at the dartboard of terrible things that can happen in a marriage, and you definitely hit, no matter where you throw it. And part of my healing process, I was very surprised that I needed to move into, I was a victim here. Like, this shouldn't have happened. And to really sink into that and to feel all of the grief around, because I kept trying to take a higher road. I kept trying to be like, no, like I'm not a victim, I'm a victor, and I'm the author of my own life. And all of that is very right and good. But I was stunting my ability to move forward because I wasn't placing blame appropriately. And once I could take out of, like, almost like you take it out of inside of you and put it to where it needs to go, then you're lighter and you can say, okay, I'm trusting that they're going to deal with this. Like, I don't need them to apologize to me. I don't need them to behave in a specific way or not. But I am recognizing this is not mine to deal with. And it is out of integrity for me to take that on myself and to try to deal with it because it's not mine.
Right.
And so putting it like at their feet, or just kind of placing it out or sticking it in the mail energetically so you don't have to communicate with them or anything, and just get it out of you and know what is yours to deal with and what is not. I find that most people who have a habit of blaming, it's because they're scared. They're scared to take responsibility for what is their own stuff. And they have never been shown how to place appropriate blame. Because I guarantee you, the people that blame all the time, they have somebody in their life that it is appropriate for them to blame, but they haven't been able to accurately and in an aligned way do it.
Mm,
And so they're stuck, just like a small child gets stuck.
yes.
They're stuck in that developmental age. And as we grow as children, a healthy way of looking at things is saying, oh, this isn't actually my fault. Like, I am not responsible for dealing with this. Like, a healthy individual is able to do that. And many of us, maybe most of us, haven't learned that lesson in the most correct way of where to place appropriate blame and where to take responsibility. Like, I saw a TikTok reel or something that said responsibility just means that you have the ability to respond. And so
Mm,
you do want to take responsibility because then you have the ability to respond. And that is true, where you say, I am responsible for my choices. Like in my specific example, I married that man. I was a grown adult and I married him.
yeah.
Yes, he was deceptive. He really, truly was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He very, very much represented a different version. But I don't think he did it to ruin my life. I think he did it because he doesn't know how not to lie about who he is. And so
Hmm.
I have compassion for that, but I also trust him at zero. And
Hmm.
so I can have love for him and also have my protective order in place and allow, the judge's orders to stand and still have compassion. I don't
Right.
have to carry the weight of that anymore because blame has been appropriately assigned and I'm just trusting that he and God will work that out. But I don't
Right.
need to carry it around anymore. And so people that hyper blame, usually it's two ends of the coin. Usually you have the hyper blamers are connected to the people that never blame and they take too much responsibility. So if we are on either end of that spectrum, we can just appropriately blame and appropriately take responsibility. But if you're stuck in a trap of other people are always blaming me and everything for everything, the most powerful thing you can do is just stop participating in the imbalance and balance yourself out and
Hmm.
let them have their own experience. And it is amazing how much they either drop out of our life or they restructure or whatever.
Yeah.
Because if you could see it energetically, if you could see what was happening in the energy exchange, if you just stop playing your end of the game, it's amazing how their end of the game changes.
That's so true. So true. Okay. We have to get into like what's going on with the eclipse because a lot of I don't want to be a fear monger, but also at the same time I want to be like, guys, prepare yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a preparedness podcast and the bridge collapsing in Maryland.
Yes. Yes.
Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsing during the portal, right? We had the lunar eclipse in the portal. This is happening. Not only that, another barge hits a bridge in Oklahoma. So we have that happening. At the same time, I'm hearing talk of the power grid going to be put down. They're trying to take that down. And all this other stuff is being thrown at me right now with CERN opening up whatever their thing
Yeah.
that their
During the
portal
eclipse. Oh
to
my God.
find the God particle so that maybe a demon can come through or someone else time travel wise. I don't know what's going on in the world, but I'm just hearing all of this stuff happening. Not to mention, I heard there's something called the Devil's Comet that's also going to be going through on April 8th. Like all of this happening on April 8th
Yeah.
does concern me. How do we not be fear mongers? How do we not freak out about all this stuff happening?
Because it's the question of what's right about this that I'm not seeing. So let's pretend that all of this really truly like there is something significant that is starting or happening on the 8th and it is the power is going to go down and we begin like all the years that we've all been thinking about for so long of like everything falling apart, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's the underlying like we're all just as Christians like if we read the Bible, we know there's a bunch of end of time stuff. There is this like eventually everything is going to fall apart. That's kind
Yes.
of the gist of what I grew up thinking and believing. And then the more that I read about it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what this is communicating. And so it's like, okay, is this the moment where it all starts to fall apart? Maybe. But what's right about this that I'm not seeing is if it is all going to fall apart, that means Jesus is coming soon,
Yes.
which is amazing. Like,
Bring it, right?
best thing ever. And we are told over and over and over again in the Bible the most consistent message that we're given is some variation of fear not.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
we are commanded to not fear. I think I see it more as a pleading or like a, hey, I've given you plenty of reasons not to be afraid, because we are told that if you are prepared, you shall not fear.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that I believe that, yes, we need to be physically and like financially prepared. Like, that's great. But I know that in this economic time, there are a lot of people that are not in a position financially that they would like to be.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
believe that the mental and emotional and specifically spiritual preparations are far more important and crucial, because let's say you've carefully planned your food storage for decades and you're
Mm-hmm.
meticulous and you rotate it and it is like ready to go. But some disaster happens in your area with all of the stuff that's going on and it gets completely flooded, or an earthquake happens, or something happens and you are cut off from that. If you've been pouring all of your time and energy into the physical preparation, but you haven't spent any time in the mental and emotional and spiritual preparation, you're totally screwed. Or you're home with all your food and you're safe and protected, but you're going to lose your ever-living mind, because the world is the evil is amplifying and it really is not hiding anymore. My husband and I talk about this all the time because I feel it. I'm very sensitive to what's going on in the world, like so many people are. And sometimes it just overwhelms me, and it used to even more so. But the evil and I
The evil.
actively try not to expose myself to it. I don't watch the news. I
Right.
don't read terrible things, but it gets in and I see it and I can feel it, and there's stuff that I intuitively know that's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff gets confirmed sometimes. And the evil in the world, the way that our children are being handled, like collectively our children, like as humanity, and um the the absolutely horrific things that are happening in the world are very real. But I just keep saying to myself, okay, what's right about this that I'm not seeing? And God is in charge. Christ is king. We don't need to be afraid. And the things that we usually think are super duper 10 out of 10 important are often not what's most important. We
Mm-hmm.
cling to the things of this world, but we are not of this world. And that's why when we cling to the things of this world, we're in pain. But
Yes.
we are not, this is not our home. This is not where we stay.
Mm-hmm.
We will move on to greater realms from this. And what we do here and how we experience this does matter. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I think if we could see the whole perspective of it, we would just be so amazed at how much what we thought mattered doesn't.
Yeah. And just how exciting it is to be on the earth at this time, because we chose this time, right? Like we're here.
And I have come to the conclusion that a lot of why we are here on Earth is to feel emotions. We need a body to feel emotions.
Mm,
There's experiences that we have with a body that we can't have without a body. And so if you step back and you really stop to consider, like, okay, if we're here to feel emotions, there's plenty of that these days. Like,
yeah.
and so just I've moved into the last few years just being grateful when I'm experiencing an emotion, no matter what it is. Like
Mm,
really hard emotions, really positive emotions, just taking a moment. It's almost like I'm connecting with the version of me that was like, I'm gonna go to Earth and it's gonna be amazing because I'm gonna feel everything. And it's like tapping into that for a moment and just appreciating, yep, right now I'm feeling stuff. This is apparently what I wanted to do while I was here. And what we assign as suffering and we assign as terrible, I think in an eternal perspective, is not the same thing. The measuring sticks that we use here on Earth are are they're okay. It's okay that we do things the way that we do. I definitely am not a fan of shaming people for trying the best that they can. But I think if we could see what actually truly, truly matters to ourselves, like our spirit, like the thing that is eternal,
hmm
we would be totally amazed, and nothing would be hard. Nothing would be hard ever again if we could see what really, really mattered. And we would just drop the stuff that doesn't matter and we would just focus on the stuff that does. And I just I don't know because I haven't seen it. This part of the mysteries of God have not been opened up to me at this point, but I am convinced that we would just instantly have peace and we would instantly have compassion for even the most difficult of situations and people if we
Yeah.
could really know. And so these events like this, for me, it's just a reminder, but and I would imagine most people that are listening to your podcast are not the type of people that really need that wake up call. But it's just a reminder to align yourself to God. Just repent if you want to call it that, but really it's am I living in alignment with what God has been telling me to do and to not do? Both on
Yeah.
the big, huge, like reading the scriptures scheme and also the subtle day to day. Like God's been telling me forever to meditate. And it took me years to finally start doing that. Like that's a very
Hmm.
simple, subtle, that's not a commandment for every person on the planet. But
Hmm.
every time I've gone to him about health issues or different struggles, it's always kind of in the bundle of, oh, and by the way, you need to be meditating regularly. Things like that, that God has been telling you what you need to be
Hmm.
doing or what you need to
Hmm.
stop doing. And we keep putting it aside for whatever reason. And if we can actually move into that, I believe that's what preparedness is about the most. And yes, make sure you're prepared in the classic ways. I'm definitely, that makes sense. It's logical, it's rational. But if we don't have a clear conduit to God, and if we can't hear his voice to be so clear on, go left, go right, do this, stop doing that. If we aren't there, that should be our number one focus. It is the most important skill we will ever develop in this life, is to learn
Hmm.
how God speaks to us.
Yeah. And what if people want to do that, but they find all this worry coming to their brain, especially women, we're worriers about every little thing.
Yeah,
What are the steps someone could take to start dropping the worry so that they can ease into peace and hear that voice?
I that is such a powerful question, and I don't mean to make light of it because it's very real. For me, honestly, one of the best things that helped me to kind of connect more to God because I stopped getting in my own way was understanding my astrology and human design,
Yeah.
understanding how my mind works. Like your Mercury placement is your mind and your communication. Understanding that, oh, okay, now I get that a little bit better. Understanding where your anxieties are coming from. Like for me, my sun and my moon are squaring each other. That means my needs and my wants are perpetually in conflict all the time, never not. Like just understanding that on a basic level has allowed me to go, oh, okay, that's why I keep trying to be like other people, but I'm not like other people. So how do I make this work for me? How does God expect me to have my needs and my wants constantly in conflict? Like I always want to go north and east at the same time. Like it's there's something divine and beautiful in that, but seeing where are the parts of your chart individually that are kind of difficult or will cause struggle or aren't going to flow naturally, that's usually the source of your anxiety. In
Hmm.
addition to, you've got to have good mindset. You've got to like where I really started with all of my healing journey, it began because I started to actually notice what were the thoughts that I was thinking all the time. It didn't occur to me that I would be thinking thoughts all the time until I slowed down and I was like, oh, there is a tape running all the time of things that I
Yes.
say to myself over and over and over again.
Yes.
Anything with repetition is going to become powerful. I don't care what it is that you're repeating. If you repeat something over and over and over again, it is going to become so unbelievably powerful. And when I first peeled back that layer and saw what was going on there, I was horrified at what I found. I was so mean to myself. I
Hmm.
was relentless. Turns
Yeah.
out that's my Virgo moon. My
Yeah.
Virgo moon
Yeah.
is very self-critical, and understanding that and just noticing it to begin with, I could start to change things. And I've, read hundreds of books on the subject, and I've had to pull myself out of some very difficult situations. And of course, I was led by the spirit and I was taken care of by so many angels, but um, we we really cannot afford to speak to ourselves that way.
Mm.
It took me years, but I don't do it anymore. I
Hmm.
have stopped being mean to myself and now I am free. And so when I do get into an anxious place, um, I can have a conversation with myself and I can say, hey, like what's going on? Like why is this causing me to be so like ungrounded right now. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's the transits of what's going on. I can look it up and I can be like, oh, yep, there it is. And sometimes it's just getting curious with myself, but usually it's a part of me, some version of me that needs to be heard that I have been stuffing down or putting duct tape over her mouth or just ignoring. And that when we can be fully integrated with ourselves, we can be at peace. That is freedom.
Hmm. Stopping that negative talk, that self-talk, and seeing where you're doing it and the patterns and what's triggering that, I guess, and really just making the shifts in your brain to think better thoughts of yourself. Is that what you're saying you did?
It's part of that, but it's also making friends with the parts of you that you hate the most.
Mm,
And it sounds just insane. It's like, no, I'm trying to get rid of that part of me. She's terrible. Like, I
right.
don't want her around anymore. I keep trying to evict her, but she keeps showing back up. Like most of us are trying to like saw off our own arm and just think that that's going to solve our problems, but the secret is that you can't. Like these
Hmm.
parts of you that are the most ugly and the most terrible and that you fight against the hardest, they're parts of you, and they're parts of you that are trying to say something, they're trying to communicate, and they don't always have to be terrible. But the parts of me that I hated the most, it's not that I, flipped it and then they became the best parts of me, right? But it's an understanding that when I'm harshly judging another person, when I'm being so mean in my head to another person, it's because something in them is echoing back to me of something in me that I don't like about myself.
Hmm.
Like inconsiderate people drive me insane. This is one of the
Yeah.
most consistent things. Like I just think they're
Mhm.
so rude. How could you do that? Don't you know? Blah, blah, blah. And like when I start to listen to like what's going on in my head, don't you know you're not supposed to get in people's way? You're taking your little cart around the shopping, going
Mhm.
grocery shopping
Costco,
or
you're like, why do
yeah.
people stop right there in the middle? Come on.
Oh, it just enrages me, right? And so when I get curious and I go inside, it's that I am scared that I'm going to be in someone else's way, that I need to
Mm.
make sure to not be a bother, that I need to like that I've contorted myself into something that I'm not so that other people aren't uncomfortable. So I'm mad at that other person of who do you think you are? Don't you know you're supposed to contort yourself into something that you're not and be uncomfortable and miserable too, like I am?
Right.
And
Right.
and
Oh my gosh.
we can get so bent out of shape. But if I
Yeah.
go inward and I say, hey, sweetie, what's going on? Like, are you okay? Like, guess what? You get to take up all the space and time that you need. I'll say that to people now when I'm out and about if it flows and if it works when people, they're kind of like, they get in the way, they're like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I'll often say, you get to take up all the space and time that you need because I believe that those words need to be spoken far and wide, but mainly to myself. And so
Right.
I don't know if I've ever said it to anybody and they've remembered or it's made any impact, but that may be
Yeah.
the first time anyone has ever said that to them. But I say it to
Yeah.
myself all the time.
Love that so much. So I think this is a good reminder for all of us to, like you said, make friends with those parts of us that we don't like and see if we can't make a transformation between the two and just see what comes, right? Come what may and love it.
Yes. Yes. And usually when we start to really move with compassion and gentleness towards those really heinous thoughts and parts of ourselves, we find that what we hated most about ourselves is just a manifestation of fear and just a lack of maturity because that part of us didn't grow up yet. And so when we can hold it and we can cry with it and we can allow that to move through, it kind of grows up and it moves past that. And instead, that critical voice, it still happens. Like, and now it makes me laugh more than anything when I'm like, "Rah, rah, rah," I'm like, oh, apparently I need to spend a little bit more time with that part of myself. And it has nothing to do with them. I live in a town where there's a lot of retired people. A lot of people move to where I live. And so like a high percentage. And so you'll be around them in the grocery store or on the road or whatever, and they're moving too slow and they really probably shouldn't be driving anymore. Let's be real, it's not
Hmm.
safe. And so there's
Hmm.
lots of opportunities to practice this, but it's that my self-care is usually in the toilet. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not having enough alone time. I'm not having enough connected time. I'm not, taking care of the most fundamental parts of myself. That's when that part of myself will kind of come up and out, and she comes up and out to try to protect me. And I can say,
It's
"Hey,
so
sweetie,
interesting.
thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you showed up. I can't believe that I neglected you long enough that you had to show up this way." And I can have that opportunity. Or I can, yell at people or think bad thoughts and ruin my own day. That's fine too. That's a perfectly
Yeah.
valid choice. But I would rather be happy and at peace. And so these eclipses, they get down to these nitty gritty because if you have been living really out of alignment and you're like, no, I go to church and I read my scriptures and I'm a good person, but like you're thinking negative, hateful thoughts about everybody around you, and
Right.
like you're just going about your life and you're so miserable, that's repentance too, is where
Hmm.
you say, okay, you know what, God, could you please show me? Can you show me, please, how to not hate myself so much? And God would go, oh, good. I'm so glad you asked. I've been
Yeah.
waiting. I really, really
Yeah.
want to show you this.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I love it so much. I needed to hear that for myself because listen, I've got a lot of judgmental thoughts too. I'm like, why aren't they taking their baby out in Sacrament?
Oh,
This is a
yeah.
shared space. I don't know why in shared spaces people can't just respect everybody here, you know?
Yes.
So,
And anytime you get caught up in one of those judgmental, and I do it, I'm definitely not here to be like, I've stopped judging people. No, it's that I see judgment as a signal of something else. And
yes.
as a Virgo moon, Virgo is the one that thinks it's the most right. And so inside of myself, I truly believe I am the most right. And so I have to constantly self-confront and just be like,
Yes.
okay, well, that's fine if you're the most right for you, but
Hmm.
like just allowing other people to have their path. And yes, I might know a better way that they could do it, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that it's more right for me to believe that I'm more right. It means they are on their own path. And if they want to leave their baby in the carrier and not pull them out, or if they want to cut people off and then stop walking in the middle of the grocery store,
Right.
that's a perfectly valid way to go through life too. Who am I to say that's wrong?
Yes. And it's a matter of us just being able to be patient with all of that and not let that like burden us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's
And not in
okay.
a way where you're like white knuckling it, but where you
Yeah.
can really truly move with compassion, like as Jesus would. And I
Yeah.
feel like literally everything is always trying to get us to be more like our Savior. Every single everything. And that is
Yeah.
always the answer. Like the answer isn't how much food storage should I have before April 8th? If you're feeling led to that question, absolutely go with that for sure. But
Hmm.
but every single thing, it Jesus could come in 5 minutes. I don't know. I doubt it based on what I understand, but like, and it could also take another 45 years. I have no idea. It could be another 1,000 years. I would be very surprised. I really do think we are in the last days. And I do think that this upcoming eclipse is a sign of the times. I do think that there is a lot of layers to it. But as somebody who knows how to read the signs in the heavens, I'm looking at this and I'm taking note and I'm going, okay, would I be okay if I died today? Is
Hmm.
there anything that's left undone?
Yeah.
Do the
Yeah.
people that I love in my life know that I love them?
Yeah.
Is there anything like grossly out of order that I really just need to take care of? Like that's what, as somebody who's looked at way more than we've had a chance to address on this podcast, looking at everything, that's the ultimate message in this for me is there any, because it's a little bit more of a peaked moment of like, is there, this is a check-in point. Is there anything that I have left undone?
Oh my gosh. That's the perfect ending of this podcast. Like that's what people need to ask right now. Is there anything left undone? Is there anything left unsaid? How can I love better? How can I accept myself better and just make that change now? I
But with
love it.
compassion, not as another burden, like not as another thing on your to-do list, but when you really drop everything, what is left?
Hmm. Okay, guys, you heard it from Naomi right here. So, where can they find you if they want more of this astrology goodness in their life?
You can come find me at Illuxology. Illuxology means the study of the light-filled life. So illuxology.com. And if you're having trouble typing that in or spelling it, you can go to learnastrology.com and that'll redirect you to my website. And I have
Yeah.
an excellent Facebook group that is very active. We've got
Yes,
just under 3,000 people in it right now.
it's
And it's
amazing.
called Light-Filled Astrology and Human Design. Lots of great content, lots of good stuff. And if you jump on my email list, I send out a weekly transit email that I write myself. myself of, hey, this is what's going on coming up. Like just, all the bullet points of this is what's going on and this is what you need to know about that. And I've been having a lot of fun doing that and I'm getting
It's
amazing feedback.
so good. What about Instagram?
Instagram, Ilexology, YouTube, everything is Ilexology. I made up the word so that I could get all the social media handles
Right,
and
right,
just
right.
expand unfettered. So yeah, I'm on pretty much everything except Twitter or X now. It's not really my
Yeah.
thing, but pretty much everywhere you can find me. My YouTube channel has some really good stuff that you can dive into as well. So yeah,
Okay. I did not know that Twitter was that X symbol now. I saw
yeah,
that and I'm like, what is that? Because I'm not on Twitter myself. But
right.
okay, that is awesome. You guys have to try one of her courses because you have so many amazing courses, like you said in the beginning. And I highly recommend that light field astrology for connection is so good. Human design, that human design one you have.
Yeah,
So many modules. I'm
amazing.
loving it because I
Yeah,
went through that light field astrology for connection pretty fast. It was just
yeah,
like 4 videos or something, 4 or 5.
yeah.
But this other one, I'm like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
this is really going to be a deep dive into myself with the human design. And I'm so
Yeah.
excited about
It's
it.
over
Oh,
5 hours of content in there. One of the gals that works here, Elise Houston in Alexology, she's always like, I can't believe you're only charging that much for it. She's like, you need to charge more for this. It's
it's good.
way like I should probably charge 3 times the amount that I'm charging, but I'm like,
Yeah.
for right now, that's where it's at.
She over delivers for sure. And I will say the self-care treasure trove is fantastic. It's got a lot of stuff in there too, a lot of content, which will take forever. So I don't know. I'm just looking forward to trying it all. It's just amazing stuff. And you've taught me more than all these other people I've been following in astrology and human design. Like when I first heard you speak about it, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it now. She's explaining it in a way I can understand it because it is in depth. So thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast. We are so appreciative of your time here. And I don't want to take up any more, but thank you for telling us about this eclipse and how we can better prepare ourselves.
My pleasure. Thank you so, so much.
All right. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too.